But no, good interview otherwise.
Oh, good to hear, man.
But yeah. Yep, you have the Figma board posted. Oh, someone actually subscribed. You weren't lying to me. But yeah, here's the Google form. If anyone wants to fill that out, we will start not interview. We'll start reviewing resumes, and I'm just going to really quickly add everyone again. I feel great every time I do it. Um, Yeah, a sparse table. SPARSE, a sparse table. Yeah, I don't really understand the problem so much still. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think I've probably like made like maybe like 30 or 20 submissions for this one thing. Uh but we're suffering. We're suffering.
Hell yeah.
Um
I haven't gotten a
we
sparse
gotta
table question in a real interview before. I have been asked spatial optimization questions. That was gamed. I forgot what company that was. That was a fun one. Maybe,
I don't even know what a sparse table is. Anyway, I posted a resume if you can see it.
yes, sir.
I just
Ads GG. Yeah, I'm also getting an ad. Huge.
I'm sorry for the ads, my dudes. Anyway, looking at this, the format's not the end of the world, but it's a little sparse considering like how much experience you have. Kind of looking, you worked at Genesys, that's pretty cool. I'm fine with this. Your education should probably go higher. Only reason I mentioned that is a lot of recruiters want to see that first before anything else. And kind of reading the bullets, let's see, implemented new features and unit test enhanced UI components with 35 million page views a week. This is kind of one thing where it's kind of like you're trying to attribute something that not necessarily you may have done. It's kind of like, maybe I added a function widget that ran on a site that had 100 million. So it's one of those things where it's kind of attributing something a little bit larger than what it is. So just kind of consider that. Also, you're saying a very general, broad over thing for this that says multiple things as well. Implemented new features in unit test to enhance UI components. Like I'm a little bit confused. You're saying you're doing features and unit tests and they're enhancing UI components. So I'm kind of trying to figure out like, okay, how are they enhancing UI components? That's something definitely you can improve on, and I think you should definitely be rewording this bullet point. Otherwise, improve code efficiency by reducing redundant API call and caching response supporting 660 users weekly. Weekly is such a weird stat to use in my opinion still. Um, but like saying improve code efficiency doesn't really mean much. I think saying like what do you mean by like reducing API calls? Like what did you do? Were you just caching things to reduce it? Or did you completely rewrite the API call? Like there's a bunch of questions that I'm getting, but I don't really have like a clear view of what's going on. As well as like I don't even know what the tech stack is. Like I don't know how you actually did any of this. Going on, contribute to the development and maintenance of user interface of analytic dashboards using. I don't think you need to say like any of this, and I think you should just talk about you designing dashboards and get rid of this and just talk about how you ingest the data and made the dashboards. Implemented UI improvements, utilized. I think like this whole part is kind of weak. Like if you implemented UI improvements, just talk about like what you did to improve things and how you did it. Like what did you do in specific? Did you make like a new layout? Did you make a new component for a new feature? What did you do it in? Stuff like that. Let's see. This is a software developer student. Is this? I think this is still co-op. So you should be definitely putting co-op, I think. Provide technical support in design, development, integration, implementation, and maintenance over four software solutions. I would get rid of this. I would pick one of them, talk about it, and then just like elaborate either on the other bullet points about these other four solutions, or just talk about this one solution that you made. Manage Microsoft Power Microsoft Power automated workflows. Automate. I don't know if this is English. Which synced a business intaking tracking system over. This is confusing. What you did here, I'm a little bit confused. And then created a multi-purpose customer survey app that include. This is also confusing because like this could have just been like a no-code solution. So I definitely would expand on like the four software solutions and try to like were these no code solutions, were these not? Because you're saying you're a software developer, but it's a little bit confusing on like what exactly you did, especially if it was only what, January, February, March, April, only 4 months. Like it's a bit iffy. Then pollution, visualize the effects of pollutions with an interactive screen showcasing. I would mention how you did it or what you did it. Utilize Google Earth and Sentinel 5P, satellite to render topography and 2L density. Like, how did you pull the information? Um, don't just say like I use these. Like, how are you pulling the information? How are you using it, etc. Arrange rendered map layers to contrast regional air pollution against layers in previous years. Honestly, I feel like you could just get rid of this and just talk more about these. But like, you could leave this bullet if you want, just because you don't have too much. Then build an interactive online game that facilitated live component plays between players using backend and wide sockets. You have WebSockets, but you should definitely be mentioning like, was like this a React game? Like you should be adding that information, and then create a client-side authentication solution, allowing for persistent live sessions for users. Like, how did you do this? Like you should be adding that information. But yeah, on to you, Leo.
In agreement on this one. Um, this is kind of maybe a bit nitpicky. I feel like the header text, like work experience, like oh whoops, that's oh let's undo that. Like this is like the headers feel a bit small. I feel like if you're gonna do that, you can just like leave it out or just make it a bit bigger. Because I feel like these header like work experience feels like it's closer to the top than the bottom. So it's a bit of a nit there, but I thought that was kind of weird. And I do agree with putting, at least for this type of experience, probably putting, because your education is only 3 lines anyways, putting that at the top is not a waste of space. I think that'd be totally okay. Otherwise, not much to say. Oh, wait. Let's quickly check the library names.
They're all
Is
actual libraries.
is Matplotlib liberally spelled like that with that cap? Hold up. No, it's not. It's lowercase p and l. Okay, I'm not tripping. Okay. All right, moving on. I will say
Yeah, you can
I don't
spell.
actually care, but some people they look at that and like, ah, that's lack of attention to detail. Just for information, okay? I'm just being honest. I don't care. I don't care about much in this world, but some people really do.
Indeed. Anyway, you can scroll up to the
I'm
next one.
following you now. Yeah.
Okay. So education, that's fine for me. If you want, you can put the location. It helps, but I don't think location matters too much there. Mastercard, if you're gonna follow a date up here, you have to follow a date up here. But also, you should always just have your date first because that's what they care about, and put location below. Contribute to React-based open. I think we actually looked at this one before, maybe. But looking at it again. Also, one thing, I don't know if it's the compression, but some of the words looks weird. I contribute to a React-based open banking reference application. This is word soup to me, allowing 20K developers to integrate MasterCard Connect and 10 other open banking US APIs into the application. I'm a little bit confused on this portion. If you work at MasterCard, if you're saying it's MasterCard Connect, does that mean they're all other MasterCard things? But if you say Open Banking US APIs, does that just mean they're other banking applications? So there's a little bit of information that's a little bit confusing. And you're also saying integrated as well. So I'm just thinking like, this is not going to be like a front end thing. So it's just like you're mentioning APIs, but not necessarily what they are or how you're connecting them. So I'm a little bit confused. Then implemented a new API functionality and endpoints, allowing developers to create test customers and also access test account data from one or more of their. I'm a little bit confused on this because like you're mentioning API functionalities, okay, but this just sounds like you made just like a testing API to do something like that. But at the same time, it's also one of those things like, why are you creating an API to like create test data? Or at least when I like do testing, I just manually like put in the things to the database directly and I stress test it before I do anything, and then I build on top of it, or I add things just directly. So it's kind of a little bit confusing of you saying like you have something explicitly for test data, which is a little bit confusing. I guess Leo can talk a little bit more about that, but that's just something I'm unfamiliar with. And then you go wrote over 50 and then validated APIs using Postman. I'm gonna be real, just get rid of this. Talk about something else. Like it doesn't really talk about what you did. I would talk more about like, how did you integrate this? What are these API endpoints? How did you build the API endpoints? Like stuff like that. And then going to the next one. Implemented 4 independent health check systems using Spring Boot Actuator to monitor and optimize the performance of 20 plus MasterCard application dependencies. I'm kind of fine with this one, this bullet point. It just sounds like a cron job, but I'm fine with it. Integrated the Spring Data JPA into each health system check, allowing application data to be stored. Honestly, I think this is weak. It just feels really redundant. Like, there's definitely a way better way to go about talking about this. And then implemented 20 plus RESTful API endpoints using Swag. This is just kind of like what? This is just kind of like you just said a statement, you know? And then you also just said like you threw Postman in here too, which is confusing because like how is an API using Postman if Postman is a thing that you use to just ping API endpoints? So a little bit confusing here. Then Games created an Android app for campus pickup games and Android Studio and Kotlin, allowing 40 plus students to create accounts and join campus intramural sports. I'm fine with that. Also, once again, stats. You don't need those for projects, but I assume you just. I'm assuming, giving you the benefit of the doubt, that you had 40 people use this. Collaborate with 2 peers. You don't need to say this. To implement, you can just talk about the features. So I definitely would think about like rewording this. Integrated Firebase for data storage and React Native for improved user interface, enabling to instantly create your own games. I'm fine with that. Develop movie recommendation app with Android Studio and Kotlin using MovieDB API, allowing users to browse current movie theaters and view ratings. Okay, implemented 6 user-friendly features. Don't say this. Just talk about the features and what they did. And then this is kind of just like a statement, you know, like add this to something else. Developed a fully functioning to-do app that utilized AWS, React, Node.js, and demonstrated hands-on knowledge of cloud computing in full. I I think like all of this over here, like I think like all of this should be get rid of, and you should just talk about the things that I just have listed. And then honestly, I get rid of your relevant coursework. And then boo 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 boo. I think yeah, your turn. Yeah.
Yeah, there was you were asking me about something up in this Mastercard, right? Uh,
Yeah, develop test customers. An API for just testing.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. Um, this is my impression. This one is it's very, very API focused. It's very, very talking about like heavily focusing on the API side. The second, I'm assuming this is like a return offer or something. The second one is also talking about APIs a lot. I think the actual high level stuff here, like aside from the individual points, those are like Cookie got those covered. Is just like a bit more there needs to be a bit more direction, and we're talking about here. Like for example, this one you seem to be talking about some general backend systems, a bit of an API. Like I think you put in the API point last makes you think that it's not the most important thing here, right? You can talk more about the general situation of optimizing performance, which I think is always a really cool thing to talk about. Right, it's easy to get stats for that one, by the way, which I don't see here at all. Stats for performance. The first one, if you really want to talk about API integrating with the open banking stuff, which is really cool, lean into that a bit more. That's okay. I don't think it's an issue. I do agree overall that Postman is a bit of a. It's not really worth a point. If you really like putting Postman down, you can put Postman in the tool somewhere. That I think is more acceptable because Postman is not. It's not really a focus of any position. I think having the stats and in general having stats for projects is okay, but I would definitely not go out of my way to like fabricate stats for projects because those are usually not too relevant. In this case, 40 plus students to use accounts and join intramural sports, I think is perfectly fine. Um, yeah.
It sounds good. I posted the next one. Uh, so if you can see, I'll just like wait a second. Just to make sure you're on it. And then, okay, first things first, get rid of the phone number. We don't need the phone number. You don't need your start date as well. Honestly, I'm fine with just like how this is worded for the most part, how your education, that's fine for me. Experience, rocketry. Is this the one where was a club? I think I've seen this one possibly before. Or I've seen Rocketry before. Is
We've
this an
seen
actual
rocketry.
company?
We've seen
Is
rocketry
this,
stuff. I haven't seen
I
this
remember
resume
seeing
before though.
one. I forget if this is. I think this is a club, if I recall correctly. Um, so if it is a club, please move it to projects or like a leadership or something like that. It's not experience, in my opinion. But reading it, don't say design, tested, and integrated. That's like word soup because then you also have tracking, monitoring in real time. That's uh, word soup as well. Integrated avionic hardware for tracking, monitoring, and real-time control of a supersonic aeronautic, enabling adjustments during. Yeah, we've seen something similar to this. I would mention how you did this. You don't need to add all this. Like you're not talking about like how you did it. It's a little too general. Or what I would do is I would just have a very general statement of like what it is, and then go delve deep into these things. I definitely would not have like these three instances next to each other. Otherwise, it just like reads a little bit hard for people. Control hardware for Team's novel hybrid rocket engine, coordinating with interdisciplinary sub-teams to enhance performance and precision, while ensuring rocket hardware met reliability standards of Launch Canada. I would be mentioning, you mentioned develop, but like, um, I'm trying to think. I would mention how you develop it, like what makes this novel. Um, and I don't think you need to mention you coordinated with sub-teams. Like, I don't think you need this sentence. I would delve more into sort of like how did you actually develop the control hardware for it, and then like because you don't really mention any of that here. Like, there's no details about it. And then I don't think you need the last one still. I think I mentioned that before. Like, you need to talk more about like how you went about this instead of like adding fluff statements, in my opinion. Looking at the next one, authored comprehensive white paper detailing design and integration strategies for camera networking system with focus on cost efficiency while increasing data transmission speed from megabytes to gigabytes. This can get reduced by quite a bit because when you say authored comprehensive white papers, does that mean that you came up for these things themselves, or did you just write a paper on top of it? Because if you're putting your first bullet and it's you wrote just a paper on it, then I'm a little bit concerned. I would probably prioritize this a little bit less because that's not the focus in my opinion. And I would talk a lot more about the strategies that you use in order to sort of run this. And then you said planning integrated rigorous testing protocols. I would get rid of the testing protocols. Presented camera system proposal. Yeah, I would get rid of this. And I would just talk way more about just the integration strategies and everything. And like what you did to design it. Like, how did you get it to go from megabytes to gigabytes? Because in my opinion, that's the most impressive thing. And you didn't talk about that at all. You talked about talking to like a CTO. You talked about incorporating feedback. You talked about creating like proposals, but that's not the thing that's interesting at all. Oh, the technology exists, but you wrote a design study to integrate the technology, if that makes sense. Then I definitely would reword this whole thing if because you're writing hardware engineering intern, and it sounds like you did something that you didn't, in my opinion. So I would phrase it more in the sense that like this was an analyst role, than if all you did was just write papers. So if you just did the research for this, reword it so it sounds a little bit more like you did the research. Because right now I'm thinking when you say like custom or white papers, this sounds like you designed the thing to me. So then let's see. Next one, project designed a low cost test board. You don't need to mention how much it costs with SPI, but it's okay. I2C peripherals, allowing new avionics member to explore ADV integration hardware. That's fine for me. Integrated LED for device feedback, and I don't know that word. I'm just not going to try to just say it. TUFPMCU, providing visual and hands-on learning for hardware development. I mean, that's fine. Integrated, like honestly, I think this is just fine. It just sounds like you just did some sort of board to allow people to like test and play around with it. They had me write the paper first with the strategies, and I designed the PCBs. Yeah, so then you should talk about like how you designed the PCBs and everything. I mean, it's fine if the tech already exists. Like everyone at some point makes a data ingestion software, or everyone makes a website, but that doesn't stop from people putting that they made a website. You know, so I definitely would sort of be a little bit more clear about like what you designed and what you wrote a paper on. Design PCB for deserializers, motor, and IoT hats and Illumina Designer, optimizing component selection. Okay, this is too long. This needs to be reduced. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but you can definitely break that up because it's word soupy. Facilitating communication by converting analog signal to compatible significantly. You don't need to say something like this, but you still have to mention like how do you actually like do these things. engineered a CAD-based closed-loop DC motor controller ensuring. Yeah, once again, like you gotta say it like if you're making a motor controller, what is a motor controller? Is that like motor motor controller? Motor controller. Okay, this is hardware. So is this like, did you design the hardware and the code that runs on the motor controller? Is what I guess I'm assuming. If you find that to turn into three, yeah, you can turn that into three jobs if you want. I guess that's my question, just because, like, once again, I'm not that much of a hardware, but I assume you're doing something in probably C or super low level, not the code. I designed the hardware. Okay, then I would try. It's hard because it's engineer, so I think, but I think that's fine for how it is. Strategically designed a reliable controller that met strict design criteria, achieving a 68.75 reduction in size by optimizing component layout. Okay, that's fine for me. Like I remember this one before and complaining about it, but this sounds better. Then broadening actuator compatibility from servos to include brush motors based on feedback. I wouldn't say feedback. I would explain what feedback it was. Increasing flexibility to broaden the controller's applications. Like why? Like explain a little bit more on that. But yeah, Leo, your turn.
Is this person going for software or hardware jobs?
Hardware.
Hardware jobs?
Yeah,
Nothing to say then.
yeah. It's just one of those things where it's just we're software people. We're not the
Yeah,
best at this
I'm
one.
not gonna comment on that. I'm not. My opinions are not worth much in hardware.
Okay, this person, if you scroll up, you had your phone number. Don't put your phone number. Get rid of your start. Bachelor's GPA, that's fine. I think your education's fine for me. Oh, I think I know this person. Jupyter Networks, let's see. Developed debug. This is in proper English. You need commas. Logging tools for 20 project and 5 OS model, reducing issue response resolution times by 70%. I would talk more about what the tools themselves were. I think the issue resolution time is fine, but I feel like you're just trying to cram a lot into one bullet, in my opinion. Or maybe break this up into like maybe talking about the debugging tools or the logging tools. But I think you can definitely talk a lot more about this one bullet. Built an API supporting 120K devices and 40 plus networks, boosting. I would talk about how you built an API and why does it increase the access speed by 20%. That's a stat that I'm kind of confused on. And then created a dashboard to visualize the out of sync MAC address and attributes across 30 devices. Did you use a library? Did you use Grafana? Did you use something else? Built a distributed task queue with Redis and Celery to scale API and cut log processing by 90%. I'm okay with that one. I learned what Celery was today. It is pretty cool in my opinion. Consulting integrated Salesforce with LLMs to parse transcripts, cutting data entry time by 70% using Apex and Python. If you're using LLMs, you should be mentioning what it is. I'm assuming that it's Apex, but I don't know what Apex is. And I don't know if it's an LLM itself. So this is a question mark for me. And then develop 10 plus Salesforce flows for higher education, reducing administrative time. This is like one of those things where it's kind of just like, it feels like these are just all just trying to show like high impact things, but they're a little bit confusing. Like boosting client engagement by 25% and increasing Salesforce adoption by 15%. It's a little bit confusing for me how you're measuring stuff like that, especially if you just made demos. So I'm a little bit confused and a little bit lost on that. So I definitely would think about that a little bit more. Then Fidelity redesign customer support chat app front end and backend serving 50 million plus. Um, okay, using TypeScript, React, and Express. I'm assuming that it is not an LLM. Optimize backend utilizing WebSockets, cutting the server load by 45% and request by 80% using TypeScript. This is like, how are you optimizing it using WebSockets? I guess I'm confused if like you weren't doing something with WebSockets before. What was happening before? Like, how were you actually utilizing it if you redesigned the one that was above? So I'm kind of confused over here. Uh, Created custom React components to support 5 new features, including read scripts and typing indicators. I'm fine with that. Enabled online state recovery and agent handoff using TypeScript Redux, reducing agent wait time by 30%. I guess this one confuses me a little bit of how you're getting this, that if you're having online state and agent handoff. Um, so that's a little bit confusing to me. And then built platform to optimize and create workflows using 100 plus models using ICICLE to ease working with API. I don't know what this is. And then I guess I'm fine with that bullet. Then built a Docker-based ingestion pipeline to track code interactions, handling 20 plus model types. I would talk more about what you're actually like ingesting into this pipeline because I don't really know what 20 plus model types efficiently really means. And then optimize 5 plus image classification model size by 20% for camo tracks using PyTorch and NumPy. I would talk. I would provide more context on this. This is a little, like this needs context. Um, and then self-employed built a shop for Brett and Joss. Made simple serving 1,000 a month using React. Okay, developed app on Ride enabling long distance ride. Okay, so these are just all apps that you made for freelance. I'm not gonna go through every one of them. I think having freelance is fine. So like I'm just not gonna go into too much detail on that. And then let him mentored over 50 students. So like this is solar racing, extraordinary lead. Designing manufacturing the electrical systems for a solar car. That's fine for me. Created the telemetry and driver control system integrating 10 puddle. Okay, how did you create the telemetry in the driver code, then develop a schedule in real-time OS to schedule tasks optimally and ensure road safety? That's fine. Created a tool to map 20K data points on opioid overdoses. Not expected to see that today. Oh, also, if you have a tech stack, please include it. Data points on opioid overdoses, EMS, access in Southeast Chicago with React and Mapbox. That's fine. Developed and built CRUD app. Okay, that's fine for me. And then collaborated for devs. You don't have to say collaborate. Just talk about what you did. To create an app to identify unsafe driving and map crashes. I would talk about how you did this, and then I assume you're going to mention something about a model created random forest class. Did you create this classifier question mark? I honestly I would just like to have a little bit of information just like how you built the classifier. I think that would be really cool to have. But yeah, Leo, your turn.
Yeah, I think a couple things here that I overall agree with are like clarification on some of the points. I think a lot of the points actually do go in pretty good detail. I see a lot of quantitative data, which I think is a big plus here. Um, Overall, I think it's pretty descriptive. I don't think there's any major issues there. One thing I will say is again like some things were like how, right? A lot of things weren't really answers. Like for this is the one that stood out to me at one point was enabled online state recovery and agent handoff using TypeScript Redux, uh, reducing user wait time at 30%. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not very common. It's not very self-explanatory. So I would say it's not a big deal, but either expand on that and put the information in, or reduce or don't like quantify it with the wait time, etc. Um, I think the products are actually pretty cool overall. If I see someone say created random forest classifier, I would assume that they implemented it, but I mean I wouldn't really know myself. And I will say I will call out. I didn't see any spelling or any capitalization issues. Wait, hold on. I found one, lowercase p. Anyways, pretty good.
You can scroll up again. I like how you always look for that information.
Because it's
Wow,
so
this is
funny. It's so funny. Like it's one of those things where you can't unsee it once you know that pandas is lowercase p.
okay. So this person looks like they're a few years out. They graduated. I'm fine with having education here. I would suggest moving your skills to the ball just to highlight your experience more. And looking at your experience, design an RBAC system to validate object level permission using JavaScript, Node, and MongoDB, able to handle 10,000 concurrent requests. Uh, I don't think you need to talk about the stress testing here, um, but I think that bullet's fine for the most part. Um, but you said design too, so does that mean yeah, so you said design, so does that mean you implemented it, question mark? Also, this is part-time too. You don't have to specify these are part-time, in my opinion. Developed a cloud file storage system with S3, reducing the overhead incurred by setting up HTTP connection for multiple media transfers by 30% through batch request implementation. I could see that, but I would sort of mention like, was it just like you set up this, or did you have to send up like the endpoints themselves you on the like back end? So I provide a little bit of context on that for like how you did this. Built a headless CMS managing 500 plus onboarding and HTML content. This is a question mark for me. Running on the same server to enhance content management flexibility. This is a confusing bullet to read already for me. I definitely think this needs to be rewritten to be a little bit more clear. Um, Integrated component testing using Jest into CIDC by achieving. I don't think you need to talk about testing, in my opinion. 4 lines is fine. Four is the max. Um, I would definitely get rid of this. Developed a solution to fetch QList data from Azure functions using Python store and Azure SQL database and synchronize it with an enterprise SQL server via data sync, ensuring 99.9% uptime. Honestly, this is cool. Uh, but I would try to break it up and then focus on the individual things themselves. Uh, so it just flows a little bit better. Improved cost, platform compatibility, and accessibility. Yeah, I don't think you need to say this. Like I think you should talk a lot more about the first bullet. Develop a Python script to merge a normalized database, enhancing information density, efficiency for 20. I mean, like you could leave this, it's fine, but like I would focus a lot more on like what I just mentioned. Architect an infrastructure automation tool with GCP, compute, and Python to initialize and deploy virtual machines on daily schedule, making deployments 40% faster and completely hands free. Honestly, I could feel that. Architect is a weird word to use here, in my opinion. Um, but I guess it's fine for me for the most part. Wrote clear and concise document. I don't put that. Engineered browser section for internal tools using JavaScript and HTML5, enhancing user experience with quick shortcuts, selections, resulting. I mean, like this is like you don't need to say that. Resulting in 60%. Like, how did you measure this? Like, this is another thing as well. Like, how do you measure a 60% reduction with like shortcuts when like I know the common person doesn't even know a shortcut exists, you know? Developed a Python web scraping script with Selenium, generating over 200 input permutations? Question mark. Daily to perform A/B testing, highlighted for critical consistency issues. I feel like there's a better way to write this part, but I think it's fine overall. Created a Spotify playlist optimizer web app using Next.js, TypeScript, Tailwind. Deployed with Vercel. That's fine. Implemented the authoritative middleware with Auth2O using JWT strategy running server. This can definitely be reduced. This is a little bit of word soup. And then build CIDC workflow using GitHub's actions for Jest for component test runner. This is a little bit of word soup too, in my opinion. Achieve first place my pilot category for McMaster Delta 8 Hackathon. I assume you went to McMaster now. Developed an Android application prototype. Something I think that's a two facilitate connection between shelters and local restaurants for unsold. I think that's fine. But yeah, not McMaster. Okay. Leo, your thoughts?
Uh, Pretty strong overall. Some things I'd like, some things are a bit wishy washy. I think the actual experience here is actually quite cool. Like in terms of the products made, features made, I think those are actually quite cool. Um, Not too much to say. I think one thing I will say though is that um, is that like, I mean, first thing I will say is that scales at the top bottom. That's the eternal debate. I don't think it matters. One thing I will say is like the organization within the skills. I just have to say something here, right? Like for example, you have GitHub, and then GitHub Actions at the end there, right? You already have Azure here, but you have it under the databases. I would like collect those a bit. You have AWS here, but you don't list a single AWS service, while you list Azure database service here. So just a couple things there that just feel a bit incomplete. Um, so no, it's a bit here or there, but points wise, I think yeah, it's fine. Not 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 much to criticize.
Good, sounds good. Here, I would get rid of expected graduation. Let's see, you're in co-op. I would get rid of courses, in my opinions. Returning software engineer, great, great. Returning to work on web development and contribute to React, I think that's fine for me. So I assume you're applying for summer jobs. Created visualization indicators for 3 plus features using JavaScript jQuery to improve the user product. Created visual indicators for 3 plus features to improve user productivity by 30%. I'm a little bit confused how that would increase 30%. Optimize test script performance using Python and Selenium, improving performance by 80% through the implementation of parallel. I can see this working, so that's pretty good in my opinion. Develop postal code. Postal code? You can make postal codes? Develop postal codes to address web scraping script features, web scraping script featuring parallel execution and address. This is a little bit word soupy for me. This is hard for me to read, but I get what you mean, and this is a sexy bullet. If you can like make it a little bit more clear, in my opinion. And then migrated PHP 7 to PHP. Honestly, I wouldn't even mention the migration part. I would just talk more about like these bullets. Collaborate with various stakeholders to determine decimal precision standards to balance readability of front-end elements and precisions determined by raise from risk pipelines. Okay, this is your QA. I'll cut you some slack. Um, this is a little bit weak. I would try to focus a little bit more on like the testing portion of it. I would talk about like how you use Selenium in Java here, in my opinion, because you can definitely talk about an automatic test framework, and it can definitely go pretty far if you talk about that. And then created an end-to-end processing pipeline using React, Express, Node.js, MongoDB, RESTful API to automate processing of budget requests. This is a little bit. This is like you just put all your things here because and that and it reads a little bit weird. Like you don't need to say RESTful APIs, in my opinion. Um, but otherwise, I think it's fine. And then uh, how did it increase it by 75% if you just made a processing pipeline? Like what was it happening manually before? Like what sort of the differences would be questions I had. And then you said learn here. Don't say you learned. Like honestly, this is kind of weak. I would definitely just talk more about like the top bullet then. Sip and play, design an intuitive user face using Next.js and Three.js to enhance user experience and engageability. This is like a project. I would talk about like what this is for instead of saying that. And implemented a user-friendly CMS and Shabby to allow site user to model. Like I don't even know what I don't know what sip and play is for. Also, make sure you include all your tech stacks in. Implemented deck management website using a RESTful API and global state management with Redux to allow users to handle and browse decks. Okay, that's fine for me to be honest. Design a set of Python scripts to imitate a music player app utilizing YouTube Data API, Notion API, using YouTube to play songs, Notion to store data. That's fine. One third place at Boba Talks Hackathon. I think I know this person. By creating an app to encourage gift getting and charity using Bubble Tea. That's fine. Implemented user auth event handling and payment validation using REST and Square API. That's fine. And yeah, up to you now, Leo.
Capital T on talks. I was looking at this develop postal code to address web script or script for about 10 seconds before I understood what was going on. This is the word address, not address. I think it would clear things up a lot if you put like quotes here. Ignore the where's the undo button? Whatever. Ignore this one. I think if you clarify that this is like one unit, that would be a lot a lot clearer because I spent 10 seconds just trying to figure out what's going on there. Um, One other thing that I'd say for clarity's sake is that there's just way too much bolding. There is way too much bolding in this resume. Like things here are just not like you bolded an entire tech stack. Not sure why that's relevant. You bolded CI/CD pipeline, OOP. Like this is not a bold. You want to bold? If you want to bold this, that's more understandable. I wouldn't bold tech at all. Maybe this is an okay stat. Maybe the 80% is quite good. That might bold. I wouldn't bold parallel execution twice, for example. That's just unnecessary. I think by the time someone finishes reading this, the bolding is completely out of the room already. So just be cognizant that like you're supposed to use bold to kind of attract attention. But if you're attracting attention to RESTful API, that's just not a thing. So keep that in mind.
It's good. Sounds good. On to the next one. Boop, 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 boop. Let's see. Technical skill, Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, C. I know Leo will definitely comment on this.
I'm gonna comment
SQL,
on that.
HTML, CSS. Is React, Spring Boot, JIT, and AWS. Okay. Um, let's see. Company A, you have your tech stack here. January. Oh, also, your education's fine for me, but I would just get rid of when you started. You can just say when you ended. And I assume you're from SFU if this is from Burnaby, because I remember FSU's in Burnaby, so cool FSU. Um, and let's see, designed and implemented key features for a suite of three custom full stack applications using Java, React, Redux, and TypeScript, streamlining the delivery of critical to go-to-market data for. This is a little bit question mark for me, and I'm only saying that because you mentioned three custom full stack applications, and then you say something that's for a single thing. So that's definitely something I would think about. I think it's cool what you possibly did, but it's a little bit weird for the flow. Converted the annual sale planning from Excel sheets to a web application with global account segmentation, helping sales executive customize strategies with real-time data. Like, where did you get this data? How did you build the web application? That's kind of the information that we're missing here. Developed and optimized SQL procedures and views to enhance real-time data retrieval and performance by backend services. This kind of just feels like a statement of something with just like no impact. I would try to tie it like this. Let me put it like this feels like an add-on to the bullet above, in my opinion, not a standalone bullet itself. And then automated a notification system to notify and display live charts on production data quality issues to key users and admins, reducing support tickets to development by over 40%. I'm a little bit confused on how a notification system can reduce support tickets. Um, so the connection here is a little bit confusing. And I'm assuming you have like a dashboard here, and then this is separate from these two, or this is combined in both of these. Those are kind of the things I'm trying to figure out right now. But anyhow, built and developed a new back-end REST API with Java Spring Boot for multiple microservices deployed to an AWS EC2 instance using Docker image, increasing the resilience of existing server-side architecture. I would not say this. I would explain it like in case of failure or something like that. I don't think it's more of a nitpick, but yeah. But also, uh, what are these microservices for? Is my question. Because you're mentioning you built and developed new, but then you're saying existing here. So I'm getting a little bit of confliction. So I'm a little bit confused. Implemented and maintain internal and public API endpoints to support rapid growth of SaaS customers. I feel like there's too little information here. This needs to be a little bit expanded. And like, how does maintaining an API increase SaaS customers, especially if it's like public? Restructured outdated API and SPI best practices. This can definitely be reworded, in my opinion, and I think you can definitely get rid of the last one. Then implemented an algorithm to solve an MAPF problem in Python, finding a set of minimum cost collision free paths for each agent. Honestly, I think that's fine for me. Investigated and improved performance on conflict-based search solution, expanding nodes by 40%. I don't know too much to talk about this part, but I think it's fine otherwise. And then developed a Java program that processes the user's BIMP image file and displays several process versions of the image rendered on Java FX. Converted pixels from RGB to YUV color space to reduce transmission of bandwidth and optimally display the image in grayscale or I don't know what this word means. Image. And then performed a his. I think that's fine in my opinion. But yeah, Leo, your turn.
This one feels like a school project. This one also feels like a school. Wait a second.
I
These
think
are
they
both
are.
school.
I think they sound like 221 projects. That's what I was thinking. And then 344, I think.
I think I've seen both of
That's what
these
I was thinking.
because I've seen these products before on other resumes. So this is okay. That's fine. It's not an issue, but just thinking out loud a bit. Skills TypeScript and JavaScript I've seen grouped together as well. That's definitely a no go. So split those two out. Um, the first company experience I feel like has a lot of information, but yeah, a couple some clarification needed here. Again, right, the biggest thing here is that your first point is opening up, saying that you made three custom applications. So if that's the focus, I want to see the three applications talked about in some detail. Um, what was going on with the second one again? Let me remind myself. Yeah, resilience of existing server side architecture. I mean if this one feels like a bit more like a bit more low key, a bit more like maintenance kind of stuff. This point does stand out to me though. There feels like there's a lot of stuff that you can do to kind of expand on this one, because like this is a pretty big achievement if you can kind of quantify it. So to quantify this, I admit is hard, but if you can at least talk about the process you went through for increasing resilience, I think that that's really cool. Stuff like adding pagination just isn't shouldn't be taking a point when you're not expanding on how you did the resilience part. So I think there's a bit of prioritization needed to here. Um, Otherwise, no, that's all.
I- Honestly, I think for the first time we might be able to go through all the resumes
How many more are
in
there?
time. There's one after this.
Okay.
Uh, so first things first, this is pretty cluttered in my opinion. There's a lot of information and it's a little bit overwhelming just like on the eye in the first place. One thing I will also mention that I just noticed is like you have certifications here. You can just throw it in your technical skills. I'll also say I'd throw it to the bottom. And also, if I ask you a question about any of these, I'll just get rid of other in my opinion. Um, will you actually be able to answer any of those questions? But anyhow, looking at your education, master in computer science, you gave me the location here, relevant coursework. I would get rid of this unless it's something you really want to talk about. Just like put it in other. Get rid of your start date. You don't need that. And then let's look at experience, DevOps, engineer, intern, TE, connectivity, Pennsylvania, US. Okay. Employed serverless, AWS, Lambda function, and Python for monitoring costs of native clouds. Okay, that's kind of fine. I would try to add like maybe like a quantifier of like how many services you were sort of like looking over, how many EC2 instances, optimize ETL platforms using SQL to boost the chargeback. I don't even know what chargeback efficiency by 30% even means by tracking the end user queries in EMR clusters. I want to say like you've got to have done more than just these two things in all honesty. Like I would like to think you did, but June, July, August, like you've had 3 months. Like it's you should have done a little bit more in my opinion. Um, Going to the next one. Okay, so okay, you're Indian. So I'm assuming you're applying to U.S. jobs if you went to ASU. Too many bullets. Have 3 to 4. Uh, I'm not gonna read through all of these just because it's too much, but definitely reduce this by 3 to 4 and just talk like about like what your code was. Like I think the first bullet, honestly, it's fine, but like it's just stuff like that, just too much. And then we'll look at the second one. Crafted a user-friendly, responsive, and optimized full. This is a little much, in my opinion. With visualizations using Vue and JavaScript as front end, elevating campaign insights. Once again, how do you measure something like this? And also, like you're saying visualizations, where are you pulling the information from? I assume like Vue is the framework for visualizations, and JavaScript is the front end portion of it. So like you're ingesting information from somewhere. Talk about that because you're mentioning full stack, but then you're only. It sounds like you're talking about back end. I'm also googling Vue really quickly. Let's
Vue is a web
see.
framework.
Vue is a web framework. Yeah, so it's front end stuff, but you say full stack, but you don't talk about back end at all. In that one bullet. Engineered 150 plus REST API. I'm assuming this is endpoints. Otherwise, if you developed 150 REST APIs, I'm my eyes are opened and a little bit confused at the same time. In Java and Spring Boot backend to filter, you don't have to say backend. You can just say Spring Boot to facilitate dashboard. You don't have to say practice TDT. Like honestly, I would just leave it at this, and I assume this data is for the above bullet point, in my opinion. Constructed CI/CD pipeline for multi-container application development using Docker and Jenkins, speeding app development by 40%. You should not have two thoughts in here, um, but honestly, I could see the deployment going up if you didn't have CI/DC pipelines. So I'm kind of fine with that. And then adopted token master 0 auth 2 authentication leveraging Hibernate. This kind of just feels like a statement that you can add to something else. And then it's funny because you mentioned Postgres, and then I see Mongo template, so I'm a little bit confused now. And then I see Azure Cosmos DB. So I have a little bit question of just like DB's question mark. Why are there so many different ones being used? So I assume you're either working on multiple projects or I don't know. And then projects, a splitwise, I don't know what splitwise is, inspired app enabling Go microservice architecture featuring G. Uh, RPC API to record expensive GWT authentication using multimodal Maven setup. I think this is fine for the most part, but I would mention sort of like the database you used. Responsive React.js front end. You don't need to say like buzzwords all the time. Using React hooks and Material UI. Employed Dyney algorithms for maximal flow and graph. I don't know what this part is for. This is confusing. Train a TensorFlow and Keras machine lean learning with 12 features. Talk about the features. Containerized and deployed on Docker Hub via TensorFlow serving. Oh my god, this is word soup. This needs to be broken up a little bit. Adopted a service-oriented architecture with 10 RESTful. You don't need to say RESTful all the time, my dude. To locate nearest restaurant and serve it. I actually don't even know what a RESTful service is. Uh, Incorporating user authentication. Yeah, so I definitely would look at this again. It's just a little bit confusing to read certain bullets, is what I'll say. Leo, your thoughts? Then we have our last one, and then we're done.
Restful just means it uses rest. I agree. It's too much restful. I'm falling asleep here. Okay. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something here. Blah blah blah. Blah. Yeah. About the second job first. Maybe comment on this one. This one I feel like there's some. So first of all, right, like these two are related. This is probably like return offer or something. That's chill. Um, One thing I will say though is it feels like again this one there's not I don't really see the direction here. I think it's okay. Like for example, if it's your first internship or whatnot, you might be just doing a bunch of loose leaf tasks. I understand that's fine, right? I feel like in this case, it's actually possible to make something out of it. Like for example, one aspect is the database stuff, right? Like Hibernate ORM, Postgres, Mongo, these two like from here to here feels like a point. That's good, right? The CI/CD stuff feels like a point. That's pretty good, right? Spring Boot, maybe kind of talk about Spring Boot and the databases. That's probably what your ORM is referring to. Hibernate, right? That makes sense. Unit test, I don't think it's unit test. You can get rid of that. No one cares about that for the most part, unless it's like a QA or test or SDET position, right? One thing I will say that is missing in the first point that's not really about the front and back end connection is about the actual visualization thing, right? Like if you're putting visualizations as the key as a marquee point for this thing, I would say like either talk about the framework, like was it D3 or something, and otherwise like there's like nothing about this is about visualization, right? Vue and JavaScript are generic front end tools. Did you like make your own visualization tools in JavaScript? God forbid, bless your soul. Um, Otherwise, it feels like this visualization thing is just a bit lacking. It's just standing out. The first point, yeah, the first job, I didn't really look into this. Sorry, the second one, the one with a lot of points. A lot of stuff here. I didn't see too much going on here, but I feel like the same themes apply between the two Mercedes-Benz positions. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of work he probably did. The thing is, I feel like it's neither here nor there, right? So I feel like there's definitely a bit more. There's definitely some opportunity to kind of clarify that a bit. And I think one opportunity you could do is, and just to be clear, something which I'm not fully sure on what's going on here is that like here you were a full software engineer, and you're going back to being an intern. I'm assuming this is during your time in India, so you graduated and then you went back full time, and you went to the U.S. and you were at this company while at ASU. That's cool. That makes sense. One thing I think that could really clarify things is if you used some more hierarchy. So, for example, top level you have the company name, and then your position name, and then you can name two positions like that, right? And that would be a bit more clear in terms of the ordering of what was going on here. Otherwise, it might be a bit. Some people might be a bit confused at first, seeing you went from an intern to full time back to an intern, right? Because like we are saying in this case, definitely put the education to the bottom. And once you're starting full time, that's not the most relevant stuff anymore. So, just a little food for thought. Oh, should I check the languages and frameworks?
Gotta do it.
Microservice framework? I would. That's out of place. JUnit has a capital U. I'm pretty sure. Also, here you use Vue.js, but over here you do not use .js. You can use either or, but make it consistent. Blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, yeah, okay, looks fine. Oh, here you say PostgreSQL, and here you say Postgres. Anyways, okay, let's go.
Last one, unless you want to do one by yourself after. Get rid of the profile summary. We do not need these, at least in tech. You're in Canada, Nova Scotia Pride. Let's fucking go. Also, you have a master's. I assume you have another degree. Like, I would list your other degree, even if it's unrelated. It gets you points, so definitely do that. Also, expand on words like months, January, if you can. Otherwise, experience, software development intern. Put your company name first. Oh, but you're in India. Okay, this was before you came to the US. Okay, so I kind of see what you're doing. Uh, but just projects. You say project here, but is this like a job or is a project? So I'm a little bit confused now. Develop core components of a sign language recognition system, focusing on system architecture. Yeah, this sounds like a project, more of a project to me than an actual experience already. Like this bullet doesn't really tell me too much. Like the second part's kind of just fluff. Then you say you collaborated with a team of 4 people, and you don't need to say that. And building like now it just sounds a little bit redundant because you've said the same thing again. Achieving an accuracy score of 71% in custom. Okay, like how did you achieve a 71? Did you use like LLM? Did you use like an like something with ML? Did you use like an already existing database? Something like that. We need that information. Coordinate closely with team members. Once again, like you don't really need that. Okay, this bullet's like these bullets basically just tell me nothing. So like you definitely need to expand a lot more on like what this system does and what it is. Here is just word soup. Like honestly, like you're saying stuff like MS Office 365. Like you're saying you know what a CLI is and you put Linux command line. Like I would just get rid of this. And then you're putting stuff like in technology, like infrastructure as code. It's kind of just feels like word sauce right now. So like definitely like go over it and like throw stuff out. You don't need to say relevant project experience. Just say project. Deployed a multi-container microservice architecture to process and validate JSON-based inputs from testing server. Also add periods. Um, I feel like this is okay, I guess. If this is what the title is, integrated Docker network to facilitate inter-container communication, processing all requests with a 100% success rate. Once again, this is a project. I would hope that your messages are 100% success rate for something like this, but like you don't need to tell me that. Streamline container, you don't need streamline sounds weird. Networking for Docker Compose, reducing setup by 30% through automatic orchestrator. I'm a little bit confused on that bullet. And then process CV data from mountain disk volume, parsing and summing product values, achieving 85% faster input and validation. I'm a little bit confused on this one as well. Like those two last bullets are a little confusing to me. And they also all just read really, really long. Engineer to deploy to scalable cloud native architect, the Google Kubernetes engine using Terraform, automating Kubernetes clusters creation. Excuse me, I'm burping. I think that's fine. Design and implemented CI/CD pipeline using Google Build Cloud. Honestly, I'm gonna be real. These projects don't really sound like you did much because it sounds like you're focusing all on just like DevOps things, which is a little bit like kind of like what? Like, did you do anything for these projects really, or were you just doing DevOps work to just try it out? So I guess that's my question. And then I'm just gonna go to the last two, and then implemented a passwordless authentication system using AWS Lambda and AWS recognize enhancing security by 30%. Once again, like, dude, this is a project. And streaming the user experience, once again, like, this is a project. Orchestrated AWS, including Beanstalk, API Gateway, and S3 using Terraform, ensuring scalable. Once again, like, you don't need to say something like that. You can just say you deployed it on that. Engineered a secure image retrieval from S3, implemented robust access control and encryption. What encryption did you do, resulting in once again, like it just feels like you're throwing stats out for the sake of throwing stats in a lot of these things. Developed and Designed and developed a recruiter portal using React, Node.js, Express, MongoDB, enhancing user experience for job creation, management, applicant tracking. It's okay, but it feels like there's a better way. You could also say optimize application performance by reducing unnecessary. Once again, this is a project. Like, why, what, why are you saying reduce? Assuming there's a baseline. Like, this is like what? And then CDIC pipeline is fine for me. And then collaborated, I would get rid of the last one. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that pretty early on too, which is a lot of the stuff is about like DevOps. Like this product is just DevOps, which is cool. Like that's fine. And
It's
I
not
think
bad.
yeah, I think that put our DevOps stuff here, right? Like that's good. That's chill. Right? And in the other stuff, maybe just put it just a little bit. Just one line or maybe half a line. Otherwise, it feels like everything talks about DevOps, and then we're searching for some other skills, right? One thing I will also say, and this is maybe more specific to this resume or this kind of situation, which is if you don't have, or if relevant experience is like a bit further away in time or space, it might be worth putting dates on some projects just so people have a signal as to like what you are doing, right? Like for in this case, you're like this master's program you started this year, you started like a half a year ago. Your last work was more than a year ago, just over a year ago. So there's just not much information on what you're currently doing. So in this case, I would actually say it's okay to put some dates on the projects just to give people a little idea. And yeah, skills, way too much stuff. Um, I would maybe go through this a little bit and just pick out some more relevant things. Yeah, that's it on my side.
Okay, okay. Sounds good. I'm done. I'm gonna go eat some food, Leo. I guess you're welcome to continue if you want. Otherwise, goodbye, everyone.
We'll be ending it here. Take care, everybody.
Okay, then goodbye, everyone.
We're done.
We're done. Goodbye.
See ya.